I think spirit animals is an unwoke thing to say. I apologize to any of the Native Americans listening. I didn't mean to be.
I've been saying spirit animal a lot lately. I didn't realize it had come back into vogue.
Apparently, it's not the woke thing to do, but we are the most unwoke podcast on the planet, so we're gonna not edit that part out.
No, especially since we don't have staff.
We don't know how to edit.
Everyone says no to us because there's no one. There's no one who will say
Apparently,
yes.
I don't even know how to put audio on a full goddamn episode. You know, I'm not editing out spirit.
You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Matthews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
It's 30 minutes away. I'll be there in 10.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Frankie!
Ian, you son of a bitch.
Frankie, I'm grateful that you showed up today and didn't say no to us recording our podcast.
Are you also happy that I said yes to changing my shirt? It's like 105 degrees, and I was walking laps before we did this. I went upstairs and changed shirts because I said to Ian, I think I had under-teat sweat on the other shirt, and it just wasn't a good look. I don't think anybody watches us on YouTube, but if they did, I did comb my hair and I put on a different shirt.
And before you start judging Frank, it really is 105 degrees in Virginia right now. You probably would have under-teat sweat if you were in Frank's chair, just the same as he did.
I could sweat in a swimming pool. We got married in July, my wife and I, about 8 years ago, and we went on vacation, and it was hot. We were in the Caribbean on our honeymoon, and she walked inside, and she went like rubbed underneath her. She doesn't have very big boobs, but under what mostly rib cage, and then flinged her finger towards the floor. There's just a puddle of water. She goes, "Do you feel like this all the time?" I said, "Yes."
This is me in December, Ellie. This is me in December.
This sounds miserable. She's like, "I'm out there sweating my ovaries off."
It is. We've reached officially. It is hot as balls. We are there, which I've always found interesting too, because when it's really cold, I also say it's cold as balls. Like, I feel like balls should either be hot or cold, but I feel like it works in both situations. When you're on either extremes of the temperature situation, balls seems to describe temperature very well.
I think you're going to say no to any more stand-up comedy after this one. So my favorite saying about balls is from Betty White. She goes, "I don't know why people talk about balls being so tough. They're not tough. Vaginas are tough. Those things can take a beating."
So we today are, aside from talking about testicles, we are talking about saying no. And we probably should have said no to talking about balls to start our podcast today.
Since we're on this theme, I'll tell you something I wish my child said no to. The Richmond Flying Squirrels is the minor league affiliate for the San Francisco Giants. And they're flying squirrels, so their mascot is called Nutsy. And the Nutsy's significant other is called Natasha. So my son always asks Natasha if she has a vulva.
Jesus Christ.
He's 4.
So for all of our loyal listeners who haven't been scared away by our testicular talk, we do want to talk about saying no, because I just recently turned down a keynote request, and it's not that I don't enjoy keynotes. I don't enjoy getting up in front of people. It's not that they're not important in my business. They're very good marketing for me. They normally lead to a bunch more revenue and programs. I said no because, one, I have a lot going on, and two, it's not the actual keynote that I'm saying no to. It is the month and a half of worrying about it on my calendar and having to fit in hours of building it and tweaking it and putting it together. And I can charge $10,000 for a keynote. I probably could have pushed and negotiated for 15. I don't know that there's a number right now that would have made it interesting for me. I literally don't. If you asked me what that number would be, just thinking about it stressed me out so much. And it was still hard for me, Frank, because I think you and I both come from pretty humble beginnings where $10,000 is $10,000. You don't say no to it. You find a way to take it. And it, that was sort of in the back of my head of feeling guilty of this is a one-time shot. I don't get another shot at it. Do you want to be the speaker at our event? Do you not? The answer is no. I know that might close the door in the future, but it was the right move for me. And, I did it in a polite way where I just said, I'm sorry, I just have too much on my schedule right now. I'm afraid that I wouldn't be a good, speaker for it. And I was polite about it, but it got me thinking about how do you say no? When do you say no? What are those opportunities to bow out a little bit? And how do you do it in a way that saves face or doesn't hurt feelings?
So I think we're going to get into this a lot deeper, but we're kind of coming at this from the top, right? Like Ian and I have gotten to a certain place in life and we have opportunities that we get a chance to say no to, which is something that is really, really difficult to understand in the beginning of a career. Like, why would you say no to that? Or you go and tell your dad, like, so-and-so wanted to pay me this. And he goes, well, you did it. I go, well, no, I didn't. I turned that down. It just wasn't worth it. So you got to have discretionary choice around these things. And then you have to be polite so you don't shut down all opportunities in the future about it later. Like, so there's a crafting of this. And some of the examples we're going to use are very famous people who get to say no to things, but they have really good choices. So you have to kind of pick and choose your spots. And in some instances, you got to say yes to stuff that's way below your station because it gives you a way in. Like, from an example, like clean out a house. I didn't want to do that when I had graduated from college, but if I didn't do that, I didn't show that I worked hard. So there's different periods in your life where you have to choose, should I do this or not? And kind of embracing it and kind of building a foundation.
Yeah. And, I think when you use famous examples, do you remember a few years ago, Frankie, when that Saudi Arabian golf league was starting up and they were picking off famous golfers left and right? And do you remember what they offered Tiger Woods?
Yeah, it was like, it never officially came out, but it was somewhere between 700 million and 1.2 billion for him to join. And he turned it down, but think about why he turned it down. Number one, he's Tiger Woods. He's already worth well over $1 billion. Number two, Tiger Woods is a fundamentalist of golf. He understands who holds all the records, and he is a historian. And to that end, he chased his entire life majors. And Liv doesn't have majors. So the social currency that he will dedicate his entire life to, had he traded it in and just taken the money, it would have undermined like everything he'd worked for since he was a little, like 3-year-old kid. So like, there's no way in hell he's saying yes to that because he wants to hold together and has the fabric of what the PGA is, because if that fabric goes away, some of his accomplishments may go with it. So there's a lot of pride from his perspective in saying no. Plus, it was risky. He didn't know how he was going to be viewed. And he's kind of a blue chipper from an advertising standpoint.
Yeah, and he was continuing to play the long game. His brand is so powerful and it makes him a lot of money that taking that money, who knows over 20 years if that would have cost him $1 billion. You don't,
Right.
when you have a brand that big, LeBron James, when he was like 18 years old, he was still in high school. Reebok wanted to be the first one to sign him, and they offered what would have been just a ridiculously, it seems small now, but it was $10 million for an 18-year-old. It's now what we know about LeBron James, that feels like pennies. But at the time, it was crazy to give a senior in high school that kind of money, and he turned it down, right? And he ultimately signed $1 billion deal with Nike. There's similar in the world of football. When Patrick Mahomes first came out of college, he was offered a number of different interesting endorsement opportunities, but he hadn't won anything yet, and he turned all of them down. He was afraid of backlash of being too much exposure without the production. And it's very interesting. Baker Mayfield, another highly drafted quarterback, went the other way. He took every endorsement deal to the point where you couldn't watch football on a Saturday or Sunday without seeing Baker Mayfield 100 times. He was in every commercial. And when he didn't produce right away, there was backlash. Everyone thought it wasn't earned success. This guy is just good at making commercials. He's not much at playing football, and it really hurt his career. It set him
People
back.
second guess his commitment because he was on so many commercials.
He had trouble finding a new team after the Browns because his brand had been tarnished a little bit. There was too much overexposure. Is this guy going to be focused on football? And so, some of those decisions, even though taking the money up front was right for him, it didn't make sense for his brand.
Sorry.
You okay there? Everything okay?
Man, I feel like
Hey, we're going to edit that out with our high-tech team that just happened to edit out all of my speaking part of the last 10 minutes of our last episode, which several of you did notice, and we were actually kind of excited to know people were still hanging around with 9 minutes left in the episode.
People thought, even though I was talking to myself, I did a really good job. That's the feedback I got.
People really enjoyed what I had to say.
People were thrilled with Ian's silence. So
best episode in a long time. Really liked where Ian
Frank
just
really
shut up.
shined. You should have just edited that part out when Ian didn't say anything.
Uncommon discipline for Ian to not talk there.
So there's a couple of stories that stand out from my time at the Outback that I really, really remember. And one of them, this guy kept talking about his pride and joy, and he opened up his wallet and he showed us a picture of the soap Pride and Joy. Like literally, it was a big joke. But there was another guy who followed that guy, and he was a real jerk. And I may have told this story here before, I can't remember, but he asked me a question. He goes, "This is $100 bill." He goes, "You worth this, boy?" And I looked him square in the eye and I said, "Sir, I'm worth a hell of a lot more than $100." And I walked away. And I went and told my boss, "Hey, I probably pissed that guy off at table 34 because I just told him he basically offered me $100." And I said, "I'm worth more than that." And he goes, "You're worth a shitload more than $100, Frank Cava." And so that was over. So in some instances, it comes down to self-belief. Tiger Woods, we talked about him, LeBron James, he knew unless he blew out an Achilles or got shot, he was going to be worth a hell of a lot more than $10 million. And it's not, the long game is one, but it's self-belief and it's a vision. I have turned down, when I came out of working at Ryan Homes, all kinds of opportunities that were basically the same thing that I had before. But if I wanted to really get somewhere completely different, I had to say no to almost everything. And it didn't make any sense. Why the hell wouldn't you take that payday? Because you don't have a payday coming, but it's because you're looking at something that's longer term. And I've talked about it here before, I didn't pay myself for 6 years. And the reason I did that is I just reinvested everything the first 6 years I was out of Ryan Homes, because I just wanted to build a foundation. That foundation has been what's propelled us forward. So in some instances, saying no can be very, very, very simple. In some ways, it can be very complicated and part of a much bigger vision. And I think that's what Tiger Woods and LeBron James are part of, and in a way lesser way, clearly. That's what Ian and I are talking about. Ian has other things to do besides those speeches, even though they pay a lot. And I said no to 6-figure opportunities because it didn't ultimately give me what I wanted.
Yeah. When you think about yourself and this journey you've gone through, working for a big home builder for over a decade out of college, choosing to go start your own thing, choosing to move from one city to the next, what's along that route, what's for you been one of the hardest things you've had to say no to that was a real gut buster of a decision?
So I kind of explained it there, right? I talked a couple of episodes ago about that lawsuit. That lawsuit was a lot of money going out, and I had not very much coming in. And those things were happening concurrently, going and taking a job or going and being a bartender somewhere, dusting off my Outback uniform and working weekends somewhere. It was sensible. It was the right thing to probably do. It might have been irresponsible for me to do what I did, how I did it. But I did it because I could afford to, and I didn't have a family, and I didn't have any other kind of things pulling at me. So that's the stuff that led me ultimately probably to be single until I was in my 40s, because I just didn't prioritize. I needed to get where I wanted to go from a business perspective before I could take on all those other things. I knew I had to have very, very, very strict focus or it would fall apart. So it wasn't one decision, Ian. It was a series of decisions that all worked in concert with each other that allowed me to, that was the hardest part for a long time.
as with all things like this comes down to psychology, right? Psychology to me is one of the most fascinating topics, um, but an awful thing to choose as your major. It doesn't pay well, but you knowing more about it makes you more valuable when you run businesses, when you're a manager. I think the more you read about psychology, the better you are with people, the better you are in sales. But thinking about humans in general, we've been conditioned through evolution to be agreeable. And here's what I mean by that. Take cavemen, right? Like the reason why we are the alpha species on the planet and where we've evolved to is not because we're stronger, faster, better hunters, all those things we lose to just about every animal on the planet. What makes humans special is we communicate, we collaborate, and we work in groups. Even as hunters, we we evolved to just be able to run longer than bigger animals, and we would run with 15 of us with spears and just run alongside some water buffalo until its heart stopped. That's kind of our special strength as hunters, is we can run for 30 miles until the other animal falls and dies. But it wouldn't work if there were just one of us running after it. The water buffalo would turn and fight. So we run with 15 of us. We have to work in groups to do everything. And when someone was disagreeable in the pack, they were shunned. They were kicked out of it, right? So even taking cavemen, a disagreeable person, someone who went against the pack, someone who put the pack in jeopardy was cast out and didn't survive. And so the humans who had offspring were usually the ones that survived, and they were the more agreeable ones. And so it's deep within us, Frankie, that when someone asks us a question or asks us to do something, it's deep within us to want to please, and it's hard for us to say no and potentially disappoint someone who's asking for something. But being disagreeable in today's world, where we're not hunting water buffalo and trying to survive an attack from a bear with the pack, being disagreeable can really make you stand out. It can make you more effective. It can make you more profitable. It can make you a lot more money in your career. A lot of people stay with the same company for too long because it's just, they can't envision what that meeting would sound like where they told their manager, I'm leaving, or I'm out of here. Some of the people that make the most money are the disagreeable ones who can say no to staying and can go take a different opportunity.
Did you like the movie The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo? Did you ever watch that movie or read the
I
book?
did. I
You
did.
like it?
I liked the movie. I didn't read the books.
I thought the
I only
movie
watched the first movie. I didn't watch the other two.
second one is not as good, but I didn't even get to the third one. So in that movie, there's a guy who kills people, right? So I don't feel like I can give anything away here. The movie's been out for like 10 or 15 years.
Are you talking about where he said you could have run and you stood there because you?
I'm going to read it to you. So there's a serial killer, and there's a investigative journalist, and the investigative journalist was hired by someone in the family to figure out who's killing all these people, and it turns out it's one of his own relatives. But the guy who's going to do the investigating is 007 Daniel Craig in a different movie, and he basically has gotten away. He knows this is the guy. He's sure of it, and he's gotten away. But this is the exact quote. I wrote it down. Let me ask you something. Why don't people trust their instinct? They sense something is wrong. Someone is walking close behind them. You knew something was wrong, but you came back to the house. Did I force you? Did I drag you? No. All I had to do was offer you a drink. It is hard to believe the fear of offending someone can be stronger than the fear of pain. But you know what? It is. And they always come back willingly, just like you sitting here now. It's the best description I've ever heard of that sense inside of you of letting someone down and saying no. And it works really well. Now, if you've seen the movie, the guy almost dies, but the girl with dragon tattoo ultimately saves him. But for most people, it killed him. So,
It's a really menacing scene,
very,
right? Really
but,
menacing scene.
but
You
to
sealed
Ian,
your own fate because you didn't want to hurt my feelings or say no.
and to
You didn't
Ian's point
listen.
with it, there was actually, he had a pack. It was only a 2-person pack, but that person saved his life. But moral of the story is, like, we would rather do harm to ourselves than offend. And because of that, that's a reason people often say no. So I'm gonna flip this to a different example. And I remember when I was broke's the wrong word, but I wasn't rolling in cash and my business was struggling. It was young. And people would always come in and like, the number one thing you have to worry about in my mind is money. Because if I don't have it, I'm going to drown and die. And they're like, it's your time. And what you have to understand is time is insanely valuable. But if you've run out of money, which is essentially the equivalent of oxygen, it doesn't matter. So it's a luxury to get to be able to say no, and you have to earn that right. It's harder. Like we did the Shador Sanders episode. He decided not to go interview with people. He said no to everything but like 4 teams. And ultimately, nobody drafted him because he didn't say yes. So you have to pick the right spots. But if you pick the right spots, it can be incredibly freeing, and it can also be something that'll pole vault you forward. But you can't do it into an abyss.
Yeah, back to your movie quote. This is social conditioning, right? And
Yep.
and there's this fear of consequences of saying no, that you might not get that opportunity, you might insult somebody, I'll never get a chance to do this again, and almost all of those things are just false beliefs. Closing a door doesn't mean that it's closed forever. It usually means lots more doors open. There are so many different avenues that you can go on most things, but saying no doesn't really risk a lot. It doesn't risk your reputation. It doesn't risk future favors. In fact, the company that's asking me to do this keynote has asked me before, and I have said no before. I've also said yes before, but they're clearly asking me again. So right, whatever fear I had the first time that that'll be the last time they ask me was wrong. Now I've said no twice, very diplomatically. Does that close it? Maybe, right, forever. But I also got to think about what are the other things I'm saying no to by saying yes to that, which that's something that most people don't stop and think about is your time is finite and it's limited. And every time you say yes to something, you say no to something unconsciously, right? You're not thinking about it, but your time is not there. It's not available for something else that could be better.
So when I first quit my job and I was starting this thing up, like I already talked about the fact that I didn't have a ton of money coming in. And what I did is I hired a cleaning lady and a lawn
I
mowing.
love that you keep saying that. I was there all along. I was on Vegas trips with you where you were throwing around hundreds like you were frickin' Mac Daddy, P. Diddy running the world. This whole like I was broke is I was making a big salary and a big bonus and I had stock options and you were starting a company and you were spending like you had just an endless supply of K-Shola and freaking me out.
It's I knew when I went to Vegas that wasn't the time not to spend.
That is beautiful. You weren't going to say no to an old Vegas trip with the boys, and you weren't going to say no to anything while you were there.
But I always freaked out when I was like, well, hopefully they mail me those checks. Because back then it wasn't Venmo. And I don't like chasing money down. And I'd be like,
Hey, boys,
hey,
yeah,
Ian.
about a $12,000 bill at the VIP last night. Breaks that out at about $2,900 each of you.
Hopefully that check comes in. So, but I knew that there were small little things that were probably justifiable to do yourself that I just didn't do because I knew long term it was better from a time standpoint. So I heard an amazing interview with Kobe Bryant, and he talked about the power of time. And I last week I read what I put in someone's job offer about like opportunities are missed because it's usually dressed in overalls and looks like work. There is no better thing that you can do to learn a skill than time and task. It's all there is to it. So Kobe Bryant has this interview and he explains to the person interviewing, he goes, look, if I skip the club, if you get up, you go to the club and you get up in the morning and you go and work out at noon, work out for 2 hours, you take 3 hours off, you go back at 5 and you go till 7 and you go out to the club and do the same thing the next day. He goes, it's good. It's good work, right? He goes, but what I do is I skip the club. And instead of going to the club, I wake up at 4 and I work out from 4 to 6. And then I take 3 hours off and I go back from 9 to 11. And I take 3 hours off and I go back from 2 to 4. And then I take 3 hours off and I go to rest, recover, eat, do all that stuff. And I go back from 7 to 9. And he goes, and I get up again the next day and do it at 4. And I do it over and over and over. He's saying no to one social thing and he's saying yes to something else. And this is the part that's the best. He goes, you put in a tough summer, great. You're never going to catch me, because there's so much time on task that gets you ahead. Like in my life, I mean, I used to work almost 7 days a week constantly, unless it was a Vegas trip. It's gone down to 5.5-ish because I have kids and I have staff. But those are the things that you look at. And it's like those years that you're grinding, you have to put in those 10, 11, 12-hour days. And if you do that for 8 to 10 years, what happens is you've essentially in 10 years, you put in 18 years of work for normal people. That's how you ultimately get ahead. And it's why you hear crazy stories of people on Wall Street or people in Silicon Valley putting in tons and tons of hours because they're trying to hack time.
Yeah, it's interesting. My father-in-law has a successful business. And one thing that I just learned from watching him, he works on Saturdays, and he still does. He's in his late 70s. He still shows up Saturday morning and he's there. Now, does he work a full day? Nope. But the way he looks at it, I get in at 9, I walk my inventory. It's not as busy. Some of my guys are there. We are open, but it's not the same. Clients aren't calling me. I don't have emergencies on Saturday. I get organized. I get ahead for the next week. But most of my competitors don't want to do that. They don't want to work on Saturday. They don't open up. They don't. And he's like, I'm willing to pay some salaries to get us caught up a little bit on Saturday. But imagine all the Saturdays I've now worked in my career, how many years I've gotten ahead of people by adding that in. And I learned that at a very early age watching him. I always worked on Saturdays. I would go into the office every Saturday, no one bugging me, none of the employees there. And I worked on Saturday. What did that mean? I was saying no to some things. I was saying no to things that other people were doing on Saturdays that were a lot more fun than going in to air-conditioned office and grinding through and catching up on my emails. So sometimes you're saying no to the fun stuff to make sure that you get ahead so that you can enjoy yourself a little later in life, and say no to things like $10,000 keynotes because you don't need it anymore. The reason I could say no to that is because I said no to a lot of fun shit when I was younger, and I stacked enough money where I don't have to do that now.
I remember there were snow days when I worked at Ryan Homes. I was in the field, and like everybody would go to like the Irish bar. And by the time I got there at 6:00 at night, everybody was hammered or headed home because they'd been there since 10. And I worked all day and I missed a bunch of that stuff. Like now that I have kids, I don't go into the office on Saturdays. I usually go in around 11 o'clock on Sunday. And the reason I do it on Sunday is a lot of times I like to watch football anyways. I don't care. I can put it on in the background at the office. I have my favorite time in the morning with my kids is when they first wake up. So I've moved the schedule around, but it's still the same thing. And it lets me get into my week being ahead versus getting into my week being behind, which is so incredibly important. But it's find someone who's successful and that you can easily point to sacrifices that get you there. There's people who are incredibly socially like successful, right? Like tons of friends and all that stuff. Well, they probably didn't prioritize work as much, and they prioritize kickball leagues and all those other things. Like it just comes down to where you put your priorities. While you're saying no to something, you might be saying no, you can't have it all.
Ted Williams is one of the greatest hitters of all time, in my opinion, the greatest hitter of all time, and the last Major League Baseball player to hit 400. And he's got an incredible book just on hitting. He just wrote a whole book on hitting. But in that book, and it was kind of revolutionary for the time, Frankie, he has a 9-box grid of the strike zone. And he went and had someone statistically show him what his batting average was in each one of those 9 boxes: high and inside, high and outside, high middle, middle, low and inside. And he went and he had someone literally watch film. You can imagine that would have been a tedious effort back then with all this black and white shitty film. But they put it together and they showed him his batting average, right? This is a guy that hit 400 in a season, which is crazy. they showed him his batting average in each one of those 9 boxes. And even the great Ted Williams had a shitty batting average on low and outside. It's a strike, but it's not his pitch. Middle, obviously he was like 600 or something. You throw a ball down the middle to Ted Williams, you're an idiot, right? Right, middle in, just as high, right? But high and in, he wasn't great. And so he learned his big thing, this entire book, it focuses on swing at your pitch, spit on everything else. That was his big thing. So his average, he said, really took off when he quit going up to the plate saying, there's not a pitch I don't like. I'm a great hitter. I'm up there to hack. And he said, I take my walks now. There are some pitches I just don't swing at because my job is to get on base, whether it's a hit or a walk. And so there were only 5 of the 9 pitches in the possible strike zone that Ted Williams swung at. And Warren Buffett talks about that too. He doesn't have to invest in every stock. Well, he doesn't have to swing at every pitch. He can take as many balls as he wants. He can pass as much as he wants until he sees those few opportunities that he really loves, and then he goes all in. Then he takes a big cut, just like Ted Williams taking a big cut at the swings that he likes.
So there's a kid named Roman Anthony who just got promoted from the minor leagues to the major league team for the Red Sox.
Yeah.
And he's currently hitting 114. So he's 21 years old. He's literally 3 years out of high school. So he's struggling a little bit. But I don't think they're going to demote him back to the AAA league level for this reason. He sees almost 7 pitches in at bat, which is really good. So he's real patient. Like, he isn't making contact yet, but he's already got the discipline, even though, like, can you imagine being 35? You've seen every pitcher in the world versus being 21 and standing up there and seeing this stuff for the first time. Like the advantage that like a Mike Trout or a Shohei or a Judge has over him. He's literally fresh face. Like, everybody intimidates him. At some point, he's gonna be like, this is old hat. But he's got the discipline not to swing. So
he knows his zone.
And he's already showing the discipline up front, even though he's hitting like an abysmally low number. So there comes a time too where you have to kind of flip-flop things. Like, in sporting examples, it works some way. But there also comes a time where you need to do the work, and then you need to understand that it's no longer your responsibility to do it, and you have to say no to it. And this comes down to like pay level, right? It's like my mom tells a famous story in our family about Uncle Paul. And Uncle Paul is someone she used to work with years ago, and she was pregnant for me, who became a very dear, close personal friend. And she goes, it was so impressive because he would get the broom and he would like clean up toilets. He owned the business, but he would be willing to do everything. And there was a period in my life where that was still the case. And of course, it's still the case now. If there's an emergency, I'll do whatever it takes. But there's also another side of it, and I'll point this out. Hey, I have like $500,000 to $600,000 a month in overhead. If I have to do this like more than once or twice a year, I'm going to start thinking about who am I paying that should be doing this, because it shouldn't be me. And maybe that comes off the wrong way, but the point of it is, it's like, that isn't my job. If you want me to do those dollar per hour tasks, I got to find somebody else to do it, because if I'm worrying about that stuff, I can't worry about the big stuff. And you want me as the business owner to be thinking ahead, looking ahead of what's happening. Like, in the last week, we started bombing Iran. Like, we've got shit to pay attention to. Like, what's happening to the market? Is it falling apart? If I'm doing $20 an hour tasks, I'm not looking ahead. I'm paying attention to the wrong stuff. But I have that discipline. But those are the little things you've got to look at inside of your career and your life, and just make the right choice.
But you sit here and you listen to Frank and I, and we say, oh, we say no to things all the time. Well, okay, you get to a financial place in your life where you can say no more than other people can. But this still works for a 23-year-old with a salaried day job. I just did recently, Frankie, a 360 survey on an executive in a company. It's a director level job, and a 360 survey, you send out an anonymous survey to 30 people that work closely with this person. And what came out of it was this executive scored low on reliability, scored low on time management, scored low on organization. And it really affected her. It really bothered her that she scored that low on all of those things, because she felt like she was pretty good at all those things. But when we started diving into all of the tasks that she had, what just became really obvious to me is she said yes to everything. She never said no. They would land in her inbox. She'd say, I'm looking at it, or I'm going to get to this, or we'll have someone on it. And then the person would never hear from her again. It wasn't that she wanted to. She just was taking on a mountain of other people's tasks that a lot of them, there were plenty of people in her organization that could have done them. So she could be delegating it to someone underneath her. Maybe it was a different department. But by trying to please, she was disappointing a lot of people. And I find that your email inbox is one of the worst culprits of this. Is your inbox is really just a collection of other people's to-do lists.
Yeah.
Right? That's all it is. It's not. Most people get this so wrong, and that they think that their inbox is their to-do list. It's other people's to-do list. They're trying to get you to do little pieces of their job to make their life a little bit easier. And when you take all this pride in being the first person to respond and jump all over these things, all you're really doing is making other people rich. And sometimes it's just as simple, Frank, as wait a day to respond to that. And when you do, most people figure it out without you. They solve it. They find someone else to do their bidding to get it done. You don't even need to be rude about it. You just take a little longer to respond. Don't be the first person to respond. Don't feel that social pressure and conditioning of someone asked me a question, boy, I need to respond right away. No, you don't. It's email. If it was urgent enough or they needed a response in an hour, why didn't they call you? Why didn't they pick the phone up and reach out? No one should think, and you condition people sometimes that if you send me an email, I respond right away. The more you do that, the more guilt you feel. Like I always respond right away. They know I'm always looking at my phone. They know I saw this. They know I should be responding. No, just stop responding so fast to things. That's another way of sort of saying no, but doing it in a polite way. Delay it. That you're putting that pressure on yourself of this immediate gratification that someone else deserves. Bullshit. You got a job to do. Do your job.
The way that we do it at my company with my stuff is I have a meeting with basically every department once a week. And unless they tell me otherwise, like my inbox usually has somewhere between 50 and 200 emails in it. And I don't really stress out about it because it is what it is. It's a to-do list of stuff. If it's something urgent, I say send an email and say this needs to be replied by this particular time, and copy Carla, and Carla will text me. Like when my attorney sends me something that's critical, she'd go, you got a 4:00 deadline on this. Okay, like I can work with that. But in other instances, like if we're dealing with renewals, that's someone's going to either renew, we're negotiating a price for a rent, or we're negotiating a price for a sale. Like that stuff requires time. But it's someone else's job in my company to make me aware that that's in my inbox and I have to respond by a certain set of times. And in Richmond, they have this arbitrary system where a realtor could tell you like it's due in 52 minutes. It's like F off. I don't care. like according to who? I have the house, you don't. But
Yeah.
but like that's the manifestation of it, right? Otherwise, what I tell people is when we meet weekly, we will do what I call an email sweep. I'll put your name in. I'll go through everything you've got. But if you have a deadline between now and then, let me know. But more importantly than that, what I say is, look, if we go through a bunch of deadlines and they're asking me midweek to be making decisions that I can make during my usual clearinghouse, I have to recalibrate. Say, look, we're getting into a habit where you're asking me every single day for something and it's making me less efficient. Is there something that you need urgently, or is this the kind of stuff that can wait till we meet at Tuesday at 9? And like, but I've got the discipline to do that. And I've gotten to that place because I know the other stuff that I'm working on, even this podcast, takes precedence over the inbox. And that's a big thing. And what Ian said that I want to come back to quickly is this: if you wait a little bit of time on stuff, you follow up like, hey, is this done? That's the way I like to do it. Hey, sorry, I was in meetings. Is this complete? Do you still need me? No, we figured it out. That's the kind of stuff that people often can solve on their own because people like to solve problems, but they also want to know they're supported. So
there's a difference also if you're in what someone hears when they ask for something and you turn down turn down the request. There's a difference between I don't and I can't. Um, I I can't seems like, well, there could be an exception. I don't is a little more final. It's a little more serious. So I'll give you an example on this, Frank. And really what I don't is saying is I have certain rules, or my company does, or I do. So I don't do programs on Fridays. I just don't. There's a number of reasons why I don't. I find that too many people miss Fridays because of long weekends. I also find that after 4 days of my calendar being packed, I sort of need my Fridays to go catch up and get back to people, or I'm a mess. So I get people all the time that ask, like, can we put this regular meeting on a Friday? And I just say, well, I don't have regular scheduled things on my Fridays for a number of reasons. And I tell them what I just told you, but it's not, I can't. That says that you're doing it for other people, but not for me. I say I don't, and that I don't give this exception to anyone. My Friday is my Friday. That's kind of the way it is. So it sounds a little different when you present it that way.
So in my history of podcasting with Ian always tells me that I'm the one who sucks at tech, and he never takes any accountability for any of the things that go wrong, even last weekend when his mic didn't work. So he's like, oh man, Riverside really shit the bed. It's never Ian. He didn't hit a button or nothing went wrong. It certainly wasn't him. So I think that's Ian's way of doing it, but it's not the way that makes me comfortable. What I say is I'm fully committed, or I'm I'm unavailable during that period of time. And I get away from the can or the won'ts, and but I control it. But I do, the point of this is this: you're in control of your schedule. No one else is. And if you aren't in control of it, it will get filled by others who probably make less than you do, or are not allowing you to do the things that are most critical for you and your success and your growth. How you deflect it needs to be true to who you are. So Ian is true to himself. I'm true to myself, and how we do it. We have very different ways of doing it. But at the same time, we both have a method. So if you pick the do or the don't, if you're unavailable, whatever it is, you have to figure that out. The one thing you do not want to do is this. As we've been talking about this and had a couple of baseball examples, this one came to mind. I remember where I was standing when I was pitching, like on a practice mound. It was the team that was like orange and black. And one of my coaches asked me if I wanted to pitch in a game, and I made a response that he never asked me again. So like 6 or 8 weeks went by, and I said, "Hey coach, you didn't ask me to pitch again." And he goes, "Yeah, the way you said it made me believe that you didn't desire it." I said, "No, that's not the case. Maybe I didn't answer it right." And then I pitched. But the point of the matter is, you have to be careful of how you say these things and how others react to it, or you could shut yourself out of a lot of opportunity. So figuring that out, being aware enough of what's happening while you're saying no, and paying attention to how it's being received, and then adjusting. But saying no is critical, but how you do it has to be personal, and still allows for other things to slip in when they need to.
If you say yes to everything, you're bound to disappoint.
Yep.
You say no to everything, you're looked at as a dissident, not a team player, right? Someone who's lazy, trying to skirt responsibilities. So, as with all things, there's somewhere in the middle that you've got to learn how to play. I find that when someone asks me to take something on that I'm not comfortable with or I don't want to do, I find that telling them the unintended circumstances that they might not be thinking about is one of the healthiest ways to just share it with. So they don't know everything that's on my plate. They don't know everything that I have going on. So if your manager asks you to do something and you already have 5 really critical things that need to get done that you're stressing about in the next couple of days, and you say, all right, here's the 5 things I'm working on. Does this take priority over those? Because one of them is going to have to move. I don't have time, right? And too many people are just afraid to do that, to explain just how many things that they have on they just take another plate, and now they're trying to spin 11 plates on 10 fingers, and they drop one and disappoint the manager. And most of the times the manager's like, well, why didn't you tell me you had 10 plates spinning already? If you'd have just told me that, I wouldn't have given you an 11th. I would have given this plate to someone who had 5 plates on their 10 fingers, right? So sometimes just explaining the trade-off is the easiest way to say no. And I think that also goes with most people are good people. Most managers are good people. Most humans are good people.
They want to do the right thing, or they have the best of intentions.
And I was never really good at this next part early when I was younger, which is it's not bad to say, listen, I am slammed all the way till 4:30 and I have to leave at 4:30 because I'm coaching a basketball practice tonight, or I'm going to be on a ball field when that's happening. I just canceled with a client for Friday morning and asked her if we could reschedule because my tournament scheduled us for an 8 a.m. game on Friday. I'm going to the beach for a baseball tournament. I didn't lie about it. I didn't say I've had a conflict come up. I was like, listen, I didn't see this coming, but I got a game at 8 o'clock on Friday, which means you won't be talking to me on Friday. Here are multiple alternatives. What can we do? So sometimes the truth, if you tell people that you have something personal that is keeping you from taking on that extra responsibility they've asked, most people are pretty good people, especially managers. And if you share it like that, who's going to say that's bullshit? Why are you coaching your kid in sports? No one. But people are afraid to say that, and then they come across as lazy or not interested in being a team player or helping, when really you're just asking them to make a sacrifice that isn't worth it for the pay.
We did this episode on radical honesty and radical candor, right? Ian and I read different books. We argued over which one was better, but in both
or worse.
Exactly. But point of that story is it teaches you how to be honest. So like what happens, like that's the personal one that Ian used, and I think was a really good example. Here's another one. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You got to leave at 6, right? You got hard stop. Someone throws something at you. And what you say is no. Or what you say is, I'm currently working on this and this. What would you like me to prioritize? That's an awesome way to reply. So I'll do this with my admins all the time. I'll say, hey, I got this that just came across my desk. What's the rest of your day look like? They're like, I'm working on this, this, and this. I'm like, okay, are you cool if we move the schedule around a little bit and we finish the one you're working on now, because I think that's critical, and then can you slot this in and then punt the other stuff to tomorrow? Does that screw anything up? Do we need to ask some questions? We need to go with somebody else to find some help? But I'm a pretty good manager at this point. I've been pretty good at this. But when you're early on as a manager, you don't know to ask these questions, and you don't allow people to maybe give you the right answer. So volunteering it, say, hey, I'm happy to help, but these are the 3 things I had committed to do for the rest of today. Can you help me prioritize? That is an amazing, amazing answer. Like that's the kind of thing, like if you're 27 years old, someone looks at you and goes, terrific. What I think has happened in America, I don't know if we turn this into an episode or not, but multiple choice tests have screwed people up. Like you think it's one answer and there's only one answer. Like in the old days, you had to write down a series of answers, but nowadays it's A or C or that's it. Like every blue moon, it's all of above. But there can be multiple right answers to something. It's not just one. So that's the type of conversation that opens up big things down the line.
I'm going to wrap up my part of this episode by just saying this isn't just business. This isn't just
Works with wives,
career.
kids.
I find that the older I get, the more comfortable I am at saying no to social requests that I am not interested in. I ask myself, will this steal my energy, or does it give me energy looking forward to it? And it annoys my wife, but right now, the last year and a half, I've been so incredibly busy with multiple different things, both in coaching and in my business, that if I get asked to go do something on a Friday night, some pool party I don't want to go to, or some event I'm not interested in doing that I just think, God, that sounds horrible, I need to recharge. That time, my Friday night is valuable. I don't have many windows where I just get 4 hours to kick back, relax, and decompress. So I say no to, a lot, 95% of requests of my time on the weekend, which my wife is a social butterfly, so it drives her crazy, but I'm not in a world right now where I can take on a lot of stuff outside of work and coaching my kids. That's going to change soon enough. I'll be in a different season in life, but I think it's just as important that you get comfortable getting over your social conditioning and saying no to social events that just don't seem interesting.
Sebastian Maniscalco has a funny ass clip, and he goes, "I'm 49 years old and I'm not actively pursuing new friendships. I've gotten to the age where we're in the elimination of friends phase."
Yes.
And there is something.
Sebastian is my spirit animal. There's no doubt. I think spirit animals is an unwoke thing to say. I apologize to any of the Native Americans listening. I didn't mean to be.
I've been saying spirit animal a lot lately. I didn't realize it had come back into vogue.
Apparently, it's not the woke thing to do, but we are the most unwoke podcast on the planet, so we're gonna not edit that part out.
No, especially since we don't have staff.
We don't know how to edit.
Everyone says no to us because there's no one. There's no one who will say
Apparently,
yes.
I don't even know how to put audio on a full goddamn episode. You know, I'm not editing out spirit animal.
You know what I'm going to say no to, Ian? Anything else on this podcast? I think we've done it all. I think you are particularly strong today.
Frank is saying no to his wrap up today, which I'm sure all of you appreciate because this has gone 50 minutes now. So let's finish by saying I hope you stay cool today on this hottest of balls days, Frank.
Hot as balls, baby.
If you like what you just heard, and judging by the viewership numbers, you did, hit that follow button and leave us a 5-star review. It helps other people find the show. It lets Frankie and I know that, a few people are listening to this.